Welcome back, you night owls. Tonight we're trudging through the dusty, sun-baked streets of ancient Rome, where the air smells of sweat, olive oil, and the faint tang of despair. Picture a weary man, tunic frayed at the hem, clutching a wax tablet under one arm as he dodges a cart of rattling amphorae. He's a teacher, or luda magister, and let's be honest, they probably won't survive this. Teaching in Rome isn't just a job, it's a grueling gauntlet of chaos, scorn, and empty purses. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're drifting off from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sun hasn't even crested the 7 hills when our teacher, let's call him Gaius, shuffles toward his so-called classroom. It's not a grand academy or a shady grove like those Greek philosophers fancied. No, it's a rented corner of a noisy insula, a rickety apartment block where the walls are so thin you can hear the neighbours arguing over who stole whose lentils. Gaius rubs his bleary eyes, already dreading the day. Teaching in ancient Rome, especially in the Republic's later years and early empire, around 100 BCE to 200 CE, is a thankless grind. The historical fact here: education was decentralised, with no public schools as we'd know them. Teachers like Gaius were private contractors, hustling for every sesterce. A quirky tidbit. Some Romans believed teachers could curse bad students with the evil eye, a superstition that gave Gaius a flicker of power, even if he never used it. Historians still argue whether teaching was a respected craft or just a fallback for failed poets and philosophers. Spoiler, it leaned hard toward the latter. Gaius's morning starts with a growl in his stomach. He's lucky if he's had a crust of bread and a swig of watered-down wine. Most teachers aren't born into Rome's elite. They're often freedmen, former slaves, or immigrants from Greece or Egypt, lured by the city's promise of opportunity. But opportunity? That's as rare as a senator paying his debts. Gaius was once a slave in a wealthy household, taught to read and write to manage the master's accounts. Freed at 30, he thought teaching would be his ticket to respectability. Instead, he's scraping by, his dreams as worn as the sandals flapping against the cobblestones. The joke's on him, isn't it? He traded a master's whip for a life of shouting at spoiled brats who'd rather chuck stones at stray dogs than learn their Homer. The streets are already alive with chaos. Merchants hawk fish sauce that smells like low tide, while a soothsayer in a tattered cloak mutters about Jupiter's wrath. Gaius sidesteps a puddle, let's not guess what's in it, and passes a graffitied wall scrawled with insults about a rival teacher, Lucius. Lucius teaches donkeys to bray, it reads. Gaius snorts. At least he's not that guy. But the humour fades fast. Teaching's a cutthroat gig, and Rome's a city that chews up dreamers. The wealthy hire fancy rhetoricians for their sons, leaving men like Gaius to wrangle the offspring of shopkeepers and minor clerks, kids who see school as a punishment worse than scrubbing the latrines. When Gaius reaches the insula, the landlord's already leaning in the doorway, arms crossed, demanding last month's rent. "You'll get it after I'm paid," Gaius mutters, knowing full well his clients are as reliable as a sunny day in Britannia. The landlord spits into the dust, a Roman hello and goodbye rolled into one. Upstairs, Gaius's classroom is a dim, airless nook, with a wobbly stool and a patch of floor for the kids to squat on. No desks, no chalkboards, just a few wax tablets and a stylus he carved himself from a twig. The walls are stained with who knows what, and the shutters creak like they're auditioning for a ghost story. It's less a place of learning and more a place where ambition goes to sulk. The students trickle in, ages 7 to 12, their tunics smudged with breakfast porridge. They're loud, restless, and about as interested in learning as a cat is in a bath. Gaius claps his hands, his voice already hoarse from yesterday's shouting. "Sit! We're starting with the alphabet!" A boy named Marcus, whose father owns a butcher shop, flicks a pebble at another kid's ear. Gaius sighs. This is his life now, herding these pint-sized tyrants through basic literacy while their parents expect miracles. Rome values education, sure, but only for the elite. For everyone else, it's a grudging necessity, like paying taxes or avoiding the plague. The curriculum's a mess too. Gaius teaches reading, writing, and a smattering of arithmetic, but there's no standard playbook. Some parents want their kids reciting Virgil. Others just want them to scribble a decent receipt without embarrassing the family. Gaius leans heavily on Greek texts, Homer, Hesiod, because that's what he knows, but half the kids can't even hold a stylus right. He dreams of teaching philosophy or rhetoric, but that's for the big shots tutoring senators' sons in airy villas. Gaius is stuck with the basics, and the basics are brutal. A kid named Quintus, who smells faintly of garlic, yawns so wide Gaius can see his breakfast. "Pay attention," Gaius snaps, "or you'll be selling fish guts like your uncle." The class snickers. Joke number 2, and it's barely noon. The noise from the street doesn't help. A cartwheel snaps outside, sending a vendor into a tirade that'd make a sailor blush. Gaius tries to focus, scratching letters into a wax tablet for the boys to copy. His hands are calloused, his nails chipped from years of this. The quirky tidbit about the evil eye pops into his mind. Maybe he should glare at Marcus and spook him into behaving. But no, Gaius is too tired for theatrics. He's not even sure he believes in curses, though he wouldn't mind hexing the landlord's creaky shutters. By midday, the heat's oppressive, turning the room into a stew of sweat and bad tempers. Gaius's tunic sticks to his back and the kids are squirming worse than eels in a bucket. He lets them stretch, knowing they'll just wrestle in the dirt instead. He leans against the wall, wondering how he ended up here. Rome's a city of grandeur, marble temples, golden eagles. But for teachers like him, it's a treadmill of misery. The debate among scholars about teaching status stings because Gaius lives the answer. It's a job for those with nowhere else to go. A freedman's freedom is just a fancier cage. As the afternoon drags on, Gaius drills the boys on simple sums. "If you sell 3 loaves for 10 sesterces, what's your profit?" he asks. Blank stares. Marcus mutters something about stealing the loaves instead. Gaius pinches his nose, praying for patience. The day's only half done, and already he's dreaming of the cheap wine he can't afford. Teaching in Rome isn't just hard, it's a soul-crushing slog, and Gaius is barely holding on. Tomorrow, he'll do it all again, because what else can he do? Run off to the provinces? Join the legions and die in some swamp? No, he's stuck. A man teaching boys who'll grow up to forget him, in a city that never cared he was there. The sun climbs higher over Rome, baking the cobblestones and turning Gaius's cramped classroom into a furnace. The air's thick with the scent of dust and unwashed tunics, and the boys sprawled on the floor are less students and more a pack of restless wolves. Gaius wipes sweat from his brow, his voice already fraying as he tries to drill the alphabet into heads, more interested in flicking pebbles or mocking each other's sandals. Teaching in ancient Rome, as we're seeing, isn't just a battle against ignorance. It's a war against chaos. These kids, sons of butchers, bakers, and the occasional shady merchant, treat Gaius's lessons like a gladiator dodging a net, with total contempt. The historical fact anchoring this mess. Roman education relied heavily on rote memorization, with students chanting letters and texts until their throats ached. A quirky tidbit. Some teachers, desperate for order, bribed kids with honeyed figs. Gaius can't afford that luxury. Historians still argue whether this chaos stemmed from poor teacher training or just the wild nature of Roman youth. Probably both, but Gaius doesn't have time to ponder it. He's too busy keeping Marcus from strangling Quintus over a stolen stylus. The morning's barely half over, and the room's already a circus. Picture it. 10 boys, ages 7 to 12, squirming on the rough floor, their wax tablets scratched with half-formed letters. Marcus, the butcher's son, is the ringleader, a stocky kid with a smirk that could curdle milk. He's whispering something to his neighbour, probably about how Gaius's tunic looks like it was stitched by a drunk. Gaius catches the giggle and snaps. "Marcus, recite the alphabet. Now!" Marcus rolls his eyes, stumbles through half the letters, then fakes a cough to dodge the rest. The others snicker, and Gaius feels his patience fraying like a rope in a storm. He claps his hands, the sound sharp as a whip. "Focus, or you'll all be copying lines until sunset." It's an empty threat, he's too exhausted to enforce it, but the boys quiet down for maybe 10 seconds. Progress, right? Not really. Let's be real. These kids aren't here by choice. Their parents, scraping by in Rome's cutthroat economy, send them to Gaius to learn just enough to avoid embarrassing the family. Literacy's a status symbol, even for the middling sort, but the boys see it as torture. Gaius tries to make it fun, spinning a tale about Hercules to sneak in some vocabulary, but the moment he mentions labour, Quintus pipes up, "Like cleaning your latrine?" The room erupts in laughter. Gaius forces a smile. Joke number 1 of the day, but inside he's screaming. He remembers that crocodile dung sunscreen from a market vendor's pitch last week. Maybe he needs something that potent to survive this classroom stench. The noise from the street doesn't help. Outside, a cart of Amphiori clatters by and a hawker's shouting about the freshest garum in Rome, fish sauce that smells like it could wake the dead. Gaius tries to ignore it, but the boys are already distracted, craning their necks toward the window. He strides over, slams the creaky shutters, and instantly regrets it as the room grows hotter. Back to work, he growls, scratching a sentence on his own wax tablet. Ego filum amo. I love the cat. Simple, right? Wrong. A boy named Titus, whose father runs a dubious wine stall, points out, cats don't love you back. The class howls again. Gaius rubs his temples. Joke number 2, and it's not even his. Discipline's the real nightmare. Roman parents expect Gaius to keep order, but these kids are feral. Back in the day, say 200 BCE, teachers might have had more respect, but now, in the early empire, they're just hired help. Gaius can't afford to lose his temper. Parents might pull their kids, and there goes his rent money. But patience is a finite resource, and his is running drier than the Tiber in a drought. He tries a trick he heard from a Greek tutor, chanting, "Repeat after me, Alpha, Beta, Gamma." The boys mumble along half-hearted until Marcus starts chanting, "Alpha, Beta, boring." The room dissolves into chaos again. Gaius wonders if that evil eye curse is worth a shot after all. The lack of structure makes it worse. There's no set curriculum, no overseer checking Gaius's work. He's expected to teach reading, writing, and basic sums, but every parent has a different demand. Marcus's father wants him to master numbers for the butcher shop. Quintus's mother insists on poetry to elevate their status. Gaius juggles it all, his head spinning like a top. He pulls out a scroll of Homer, hoping the Iliad will quiet them. It doesn't. A kid named Lucius, yes, named after that graffitied rival teacher, starts reenacting Achilles with a stick, nearly poking Titus's eye out. Gaius snatches the stick, muttering, "You're more likely to slay my sanity than Troy." By midday, the heat's unbearable, and the boys are as focused as a flock of pigeons. Gaius lets them break, knowing they'll just wrestle in the courtyard. He slumps on his stool, the wood creaking under him, and stares at the cracked ceiling. The quirky fig bribe idea crosses his mind, but his purse is as empty as a senator's promises. He thinks back to his days as a slave, when at least he had a roof and a meal. Freedom's overrated when it means wrangling these demons for a handful of coins. The scholarly debate about whether teachers were undertrained or just unlucky feels personal. Gaius trained under a strict Greek tutor, but no training prepares you for this. The afternoon drags on, and Gaius tries arithmetic. "If you have 6 apples and sell 3, he starts. But Marcus interrupts. "Who cares about apples? Let's talk gladiators." The boys cheer, and Gaius gives up, letting them ramble about the Colosseum's latest fights. It's a defeat, but he's too tired to care. He jots a note on his tablet. Try gladiator math tomorrow. Maybe he'll frame subtraction as slaying apples, anything to keep them quiet. The street noise swells again, a drunk poet reciting bad verse to a jeering crowd. Gaius envies him. At least poets get applause sometimes. As the day winds down, the boys' parents start lurking outside, ready to judge Gaius's progress. He straightens up, pretending he's got it under control. The truth, he's drowning. These kids are a storm and he's a leaky boat. He hands out tablets for tomorrow's homework, copying lines from a dull Roman proverb, and knows half won't bother. Marcus smirks, already planning to lose his tablet. Gaius sighs, his throat raw, his tunic damp with sweat. "Dismissed," he mutters, and they bolt like horses at the Circus Maximus. He stays behind, alone with the dust and the echoes of their laughter. Teaching in Rome isn't just hard, it's a daily siege, and Gaius is losing ground. The sun hangs low over Rome, painting the insula's cracked walls with a golden glow that does nothing to cheer Gaius. He sits on his wobbly stool, counting the few bronze coins in his pouch, barely enough for a loaf of coarse bread and a jug of sour wine. Teaching in ancient Rome, as we're learning, isn't just a battle against rowdy kids like Marcus, or the stifling heat of a dingy classroom. It's a war against poverty itself. Gaius's purse is as light as a sparrow's feather, and his stomach growls louder than the street vendors outside. The historical fact grounding this struggle? Teachers in Rome, especially those like Gaius teaching the lower classes, were paid abysmally, often less than a skilled artisan or even a decent barber. A quirky tidbit? Some desperate teachers moonlighted as scribes or even sold their own poetry on the side, though Gaius's verses are about as marketable as a three-legged mule. Historians still argue whether low pay reflected Rome's disdain for educators, or just the brutal economics of a city overflowing with cheap labour. For Gaius, it's not a debate, it's survival. He tucks the coins away, knowing they won't cover the landlord's demands. The man's been hovering like a vulture, spitting threats about eviction. Gaius's salary comes from parents, paid in dribs and drabs, often late or not at all. Marcus's father, the butcher, promised 10 sesterces last month but handed over a stringy cut of pork instead, muttering about hard times. Gaius traded it for a half-moulded loaf, a transaction that still stings. He leans back, the stool creaking ominously, and stares at the ceiling where a spider spins a web with more success than he's had all week. "At least you're eating," he mutters to the spider. Joke number 1, and it's barely funny. Outside, Rome pulses with wealth. Senators glide by in litters, their togas crisp as fresh parchment, while merchants flaunt silver rings and slaves carry baskets overflowing with figs and honeyed cakes. Gaius, though, he's lucky to afford a bowl of lentils, and even that's a stretch. He thinks back to that crocodile dung sunscreen vendor from the market, probably making more in a day than Gaius does in a month. The contrast is galling. Rome's elite spend fortunes on tutors for their sons, men trained in rhetoric or philosophy who dine in marble villas. Gaius, teaching shopkeepers' kids to scribble their names, gets scraps. It's not just unfair, it's a cosmic joke, like Jupiter himself is chuckling at Gaius's expense. He stands, pacing the cramped room, his sandals scuffing the dusty floor. The boys are gone for the day, their wax tablets scattered like abandoned battle plans. Gaius picks one up, squinting at Quintus's wobbly scrawl. The kids' letters look like they were scratched by a drunken chicken, but at least he tried. Gaius sighs, setting it down. He can't afford to care too much. These kids will forget him the moment they leave his class, off to sell fish or haggle over grain. But he needs their parents' coins, so he keeps at it day after draining day. He dreams of saving enough to rent a better room, maybe one with a window that doesn't rattle like a death knell. Dream on, Gaius. The street noise swells. A cart crashes, someone curses, a dog barks. Gaius ignores it, tallying his earnings in his head. If every parent paid on time, he might scrape by, but they don't. Titus's father, the wine merchant, claims he's waiting on a shipment before he can pay. Lucius's mother, a baker, keeps promising fresh bread instead of coin, but her loaves are harder than the Colosseum stones. Gaius tried eating one once. His teeth still haven't forgiven him. He laughs softly. Joke number 2, but it's a hollow sound. He's not just broke, he's invisible. A man whose work fuels Rome's future, but whose wallet stays empty. The economic reality bites deeper than the kids' antics. Rome's a city of extremes, where the wealthy throw banquets with peacock tongues, while men like Gaius count their calories in crumbs. Teachers aren't just underpaid, they're undervalued, seen as glorified babysitters. Gaius heard a rumour that some elite tutors charge 100 sesterces a month, more than he makes in a season. Those tutors, often Greeks with pedigrees, teach in airy atriums, their students destined for the Senate or the legions. Gaius's students, they'll be lucky to avoid debtor's prison. He wonders if he should have stayed a slave. At least then he'd have a roof, even if it came with a chain. By late afternoon, Gaius ventures out to the market, hoping to haggle for a cheap dinner. The stalls are a riot of colour and noise. Pomegranates gleam, fish glisten, and a vendor waves a fan over roasting chickpeas, the scent maddeningly good. Gaius's mouth waters, but he settles for a wilted handful of greens, bartering with a coin and a promise to teach the vendor's son for free next week. It's a bad deal, but hunger doesn't negotiate. As he trudges back, a passing noble's litter splashes mud on his tunic. The noble doesn't even glance back. Gaius mutters, "Thanks for the bath, your highness." Joke number 3, delivered to no one but the wind. Back in his room, Gaius chews his greens, each bite a reminder of his place in Rome's pecking order. The quirky poetry side hustle crosses his mind again. He once scribbled a verse about the Tiber's beauty, hoping to sell it to a rich patron. The patron laughed him out of the villa, saying, "Stick to teaching, Friedman." The memory stings, but Gaius keeps the scrap of papyrus tucked under his straw mattress like a secret rebellion. Maybe one day he'll write something worth hearing. For now, though, he's just a man trying not to starve. The scholarly debate about teacher pay feels like a cruel echo. Was it disdain or economics? Gaius knows the answer in his bones. Both. Rome needs teachers to churn out literate citizens, but it doesn't respect them. Freedmen like Gaius, or immigrants scraping by, fill the gap because no one else will. He thinks of Lucius, that rival teacher mocked on the graffiti wall. Maybe Lucius is eating better tonight, or maybe he's just as broke. Gaius doesn't care enough to find out. He's too tired, his body aching from hours of standing, shouting, and surviving on fumes. As dusk settles, the insula quiets, the street's chaos fading to a murmur. Gaius lights a stub of a lamp, its flickering glow casting shadows on the walls. He scratches a budget on a wax tablet, rent, food, maybe a new stylus if he's lucky. The numbers don't add up. They never do. He leans back, the stool groaning, and closes his eyes. Tomorrow he'll face the boys again, their smirks and pebbles and endless distractions. He'll teach because it's all he knows, even if it barely keeps him alive. Rome's a city of glory, but for Gaius it's a grind, and the coins in his pouch are as fleeting as the day's last light. The dawn breaks over Rome, a rosy glow that does little to soften the city's hard edges, and Gaius trudges through the waking streets, his sandals slapping against the uneven cobblestones. The air carries the sharp tang of smoke and yesterday's garum, a reminder that Rome never truly sleeps. Inside his cramped classroom, Gaius braces for another day of wrangling his unruly students, but it's not just their antics that grind him down, it's the weight of Rome's scorn. Teachers like him, scraping by in the shadows of the Forum, are little more than punching bags for a society that worships wealth and power. The historical fact here, teaching in ancient Rome, especially for freedmen like Gaius, carried no social prestige. Teachers were often ranked below craftsmen and even street performers, a quirky tidbit. Some Romans believed teachers were cursed with bad luck, their low status a divine punishment for meddling in mines. Historians still argue whether this disdain was universal or just aimed at the lower-tier ludomagistry like Gaius, who taught the masses rather than the elite. For Gaius, the answer is clear. Respect is as rare as a quiet day in his classroom. He sets up his corner of the insula, arranging wax tablets on the floor as the first boys shuffle in, yawning and dragging their feet. Marcus, the butcher's son, is already smirking, probably plotting his next pebble-flicking campaign. Gaius ignores him, his mind heavy with the insults he's overheard in the market. Just yesterday, a fruit vendor called him that scribbler of nonsense, laughing as if Gaius's work were a bad joke. It's not just the vendor. Rome's whole social ladder spits on teachers. Senators and equestrians hire fancy rhetoricians for their sons, men who pontificate in polished Greek and dine on stuffed dormice. Gaius, though, he's a freedman, a former slave, and that stain clings to him like damp wool. To Rome, he's barely a step above the slaves still sweeping the streets. The boys settle, if you can call it that, their chatter filling the room like a swarm of bees. Gaius claps his hands, his voice sharp but tired. "Open your tablets, we're reading today." He holds up a tattered scroll, a fragment of Hesiod he borrowed from a fellow teacher. The boys groan, and Quintus mutters, "More dead Greeks." Gaius forces a smile. "Better than your dead-end future if you don't learn." Joke number one, and it lands with a thud, but he's too worn to care. The truth stings. These kids might climb higher than him, maybe run a shop or clerk for a magistrate, but Gaius will always be the freedman teacher, sneered at by men with fatter purses. The street outside hums with life, a baker hawking loaves, a mule braying under a load of amphorae, a poet shouting verses to a jeering crowd. Gaius envies the poet, even if his rhymes are terrible. At least he gets a crowd. Teachers labour in obscurity, their work vital but invisible. Rome needs literate citizens to keep its markets and courts running, yet it mocks the men who make that happen. Gaius thinks of that crocodile dung sunscreen peddler again, probably raking in more coin than him and with a better reputation. The thought twists like a knife. He's shaping minds, yet the city sees him as a nuisance, like a stray dog begging for scraps. Mid-morning, the heat creeps in, turning the room into a sweaty haze. Gaius tries to teach the boys a simple sentence. Pater meus laborat. My father works. Titus, the wine merchant's son, scoffs. Your father was a slave, right? The words hit like a stone, and the room goes quiet. Gaius's jaw tightens, but he keeps his voice steady. And your father's wine tastes like vinegar, Titus. Write the sentence. The boys snicker, and Titus flushes red. Joke number 2, and it buys Gaius a moment of control, but the insult lingers. His past as a slave isn't just history. It's a brand, burned into how Rome sees him. Freedmen teachers are common, but freedom doesn't erase the stigma. Every sneer, every side-eye reminds him he's an outsider in a city that loves its hierarchies. The lesson limps along, the boys copying lines with all the enthusiasm of a chained galley rower. Gaius paces, his tunic sticking to his back, his mind drifting to the elite tutors he'll never be. Those men, often Greeks with pedigrees, teach in villas with mosaics and shaded courtyards. Their students recite Cicero, not stumble over the alphabet. Gaius's classroom, with its cracked walls and wobbly stool, feels like a different world. He wonders if the gods really do curse teachers, as that quirky superstition claims. Maybe they're laughing now, watching him wrestle with Marcus, who's carved a rude word into his tablet instead of the assigned text. Gaius sighs. Erase it, Marcus, or I'll make you eat the wax. Joke number 3, and it gets a grudging laugh, but Gaius feels no victory. The scholarly debate about teacher status gnaws at him. Was the disdain universal, or just for men like him, teaching the sons of shopkeepers? Elite tutors might escape the worst of it, but Gaius doubts even they get much respect. Rome worships power. Consuls, generals, men with gold and armies. Teachers, even the best, are just cogs in the machine, easily replaced. Gaius knows this too well. Last week a parent threatened to pull his son because Gaius talks too much like a Greek. Oh, never mind that Greek was the language of learning, the backbone of Rome's education. To these parents, Gaius's accent is just another reason to look down on him. By afternoon, the boys are restless, their tablets abandoned as they whisper about gladiator fights. Gaius tries to steer them back, reading aloud from Hesiod about the virtues of hard work. The irony isn't lost on him. Work hasn't done him any favours. Outside, a passing noble's litter glides by, the silk curtains fluttering. Gaius catches a glimpse of the man inside, his fingers glittering with rings. That's the Rome teachers serve. A city of excess for the few, scraps for the rest. Gaius's pay, when it comes, is a handful of coins or bartered goods, a sack of barley, a jug of oil if he's lucky. It's not enough to climb out of this life, not enough to be more than a footnote in Rome's story. As the day winds down, the parents arrive, their faces a mix of impatience and judgment. Marcus's father, the butcher, grunts about his son's progress, as if Gaius can turn a pebble flicker into a scholar overnight. Gaius nods, promising improvement, his voice soft but hollow. He's learned to play the part, to swallow the slights. The boys leave, their laughter echoing in the stairwell, and Gaius slumps against the wall. The room feels heavier now, the air thick with the day's frustrations. He's not just fighting his students or his empty purse, he's fighting Rome itself, a city that needs him but refuses to see him. Tomorrow he'll face the same sneers, the same struggle, because what else can he do? He's a teacher, and in Rome, that's a sentence, not a calling. The morning sun creeps over Rome's rooftops, casting long shadows through the insula's cracked shutters, as Gaius prepares for another day of teaching. The air is already warm, laced with the distant clamour of the forum and the sharp whiff of a neighbour's cooking fire. Inside his dim classroom, Gaius arranges his meagre supplies, but his shoulders sag under a truth heavier than any wax tablet. Keeping order in this room means wielding a rod, not wisdom. In ancient Rome, discipline is a teacher's grim necessity, and Gaius, like so many others, must play the enforcer to survive his students' chaos. The historical fact anchoring this struggle? Corporal punishment was standard in Roman education, with teachers using canes or leather straps to correct misbehaviour. A quirky tidbit. Some parents gifted teachers ornate whipping rods as a perverse show of support. Gaius has no such trophy, just a plain stick he loathes. Historians still argue whether this harsh discipline shaped disciplined citizens or just resentful youths. Gaius, dodging Marcus's latest pebble toss, leans toward the latter. The boys trickle in, their tunics rumpled, their eyes glinting with mischief. Marcus, the butcher's son, leads the pack, already whispering to Quintus about some prank involving a frog. Gaius grips his stick, a gnarled branch he found in the Subura, and taps it against his palm. "Sit," he says, his voice low but firm. The boys obey mostly, though Marcus drags his feet like he's auditioning for a tragedy. Gaius hates this part of the job, the looming threat of punishment that hangs over every lesson like a storm cloud. He'd rather teach through stories or chants, like that Greek tutor he once envied, but Rome's parents expect order, and order in this classroom comes at the end of a stick. He starts with a simple task, copying a line from a borrowed scroll of Cato. Virtus in action consistit. Virtue lies in action. The irony stings as Gaius watches Titus doodle a gladiator instead of writing. "Titus," Gaius warns, raising the stick slightly. Titus flinches, scribbling the line with a scowl. Gaius lowers the stick, his stomach twisting. He doesn't want to hit them. He's no monster. But the boys test him daily, pushing until he has no choice. Yesterday, Marcus flicked a pebble that grazed Gaius's ear, and the room held its breath, waiting for the swing. Gaius settled for a sharp lecture, but the stick's shadow did the real work. "Keep it up, Marcus," he mutters now, "and you'll be writing lines on your backside." Joke number 1, and it gets a nervous chuckle, but Gaius feels no joy. The historical weight of this discipline presses on him. Roman schools, especially for the lower classes, were built on fear. Elite tutors might charm their students with rhetoric, but men like Gaius, teaching shopkeepers' sons, rely on the rod. It's not just about behaviour, it's about results. Parents like Marcus's father want their boys literate, not coddled, and they judge Gaius by how fast their sons learn, not how kindly he teaches. The street noise swells, a cart crashes, a vendor shouts about fresh figs, and Gaius uses the distraction to glance at his stick propped against the wall. It's worn smooth from use, a silent partner in his daily grind. He thinks of that quirky rod-gifting custom and snorts. "What's next, a silver whip?" he mutters to himself. Joke number 2, wasted on the dusty air. Mid-morning the heat thickens and the boys grow bolder. Quintus, whose garlic-scented breath could fell an ox, whispers something to Lucius, and both giggle. Gaius catches it, striding over. "Share the joke, Quintus," Quintus mumbles. "Just said your tunic's older than Rome." The room erupts, and Gaius feels the sting of their laughter. He could swing the stick. Parents would nod approvingly, but instead he leans close, his voice icy. "My tunic's lasted longer than your attention span. Write Cato's line 10 times. The boy's quiet, sensing the line he won't cross yet. Gaius turns away, his heart pounding. He hates this dance, the constant threat that makes him more jailer than teacher. The scholarly debate about discipline's impact feels personal. Did it forge Rome's strength, or just breed resentment? Gaius sees both sides in his classroom. Some boys, like Titus, work harder under pressure, their tablets filled with neat lines. Others, like Marcus, seem to thrive on defiance, daring Gaius to act. He wonders if Marcus will grow up to respect him or curse his name. Probably the latter, like Gaius curses his own childhood teacher, a Greek who swung his cane with glee. The memory sours his mood, and he grips the stick tighter as Lucius fumbles his recitation of the alphabet, skipping half the letters. "Again," Gaius snaps, tapping the stick on the floor. The sound alone straightens Lucius's back. By noon, the room's a furnace, and the boys are squirming like eels. Gaius tries a new tactic, a story about Hercules, hoping to sneak in vocabulary. It works for a moment. Eyes widen at the lion-slaying bit, but Marcus interrupts. Bet Hercules didn't need a stick to teach. The boys howl, and Gaius feels the room slip. He raises the stick just enough to hush them, but doesn't swing. "Hercules didn't have to deal with you," he says, forcing a grin. Joke number 3, and it buys him a minute of peace. He hates how much he relies on the stick's shadow, how it's become part of him, like that crocodile dung sunscreen he keeps joking about to lighten his own mood. The afternoon drags, and Gaius's arm aches from gesturing, his throat raw from shouting over the street's din. He assigns sums, simple subtraction, like 10 apples minus 4, but Marcus starts a whispered gladiator tale, distracting half the class. Gaius strides over, stick in hand, and Marcus freezes. One more word, and you're copying lines until sunset. It's a bluff. Gaius can't stay that late, not with the landlord lurking, but Marcus backs down, muttering. Gaius returns to the front, his chest tight. He's not teaching, he's surviving, each day a battle to keep control without losing himself. As the sun dips, parents gather outside, their voices a low hum. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets a mess of half-finished work. Marcus lingers, eyeing the stick. You ever use it? He asks, half defiant, half curious. Gaius hesitates, then says, Not today. Marcus smirks and bolts. Gaius slumps on his stool, the stick leaning against the wall like a silent accusation. He thinks of the elite tutors, free from this grim ritual, and envies them. But envy won't change his lot. Rome demands discipline and Gaius delivers, even if it costs him a piece of his soul. Tomorrow he'll pick up the stick again, because in this city it's the only way to keep the chaos at bay. The first light of dawn barely reaches the narrow alley where Gaius's insula looms, its crumbling facade a testament to Rome's indifference to men like him. He shuffles into his classroom, a corner of this rickety tenement that feels more like a cage than a place of learning. The air is stale, heavy with the scent of mildew and the faint whiff of last night's cooking from the apartment next door. Teaching in ancient Rome, as Gaius knows too well, isn't just a fight against unruly students or empty purses, it's a daily struggle against the squalor of the spaces where he works. His classroom is a cramped, noisy nook that mocks the very idea of education. The historical fact grounding this misery? Most Roman schools for the lower classes were makeshift, often set up in rented shops, porticos, or insulae like Gaius's, with no dedicated buildings until the later empire. A quirky tidbit: some teachers hung curtains to muffle street noise, though Gaius's tattered rag does little against the city's roar. Historians still argue whether these poor conditions stunted learning or just toughened students for Rome's harsh realities. Gaius, dodging a drip from the ceiling, suspects the former. He sets out his supplies, wax tablets, a splintered stylus, a borrowed scroll, on a wobbly stool that serves as his desk. The floor is uneven, littered with dust and the occasional pebble Marcus smuggled in for his pranks. The walls, stained with years of neglect, lean inward, making the room feel smaller than it is. A single window, its shutters warped, lets in slivers of light, and a cacophony of street sounds. A cart's creaking wheels, a vendor's shout about cheap oysters, a stray dog's bark. Gaius sighs, tying his rag curtain tighter, though it's about as effective as that crocodile dung sunscreen he keeps joking about. Might as well teach in the forum, he mutters. Joke number 1, and it's barely dawn. The boys arrive, their footsteps echoing in the stairwell like a small stampede. Quintus, reeking faintly of garlic, plops onto the floor, kicking up dust that makes Titus sneeze. Marcus, predictably, smirks as he surveys the room, probably plotting where to hide his next pebble. Gaius claps his hands, his voice already straining. Tablets out, we're practicing letters. The boys groan, but they obey, mostly, their styluses scratching uneven lines. Gaius paces, trying to ignore the room's oppressiveness. The heat's already building, turning the air thick, and a mysterious drip from the ceiling plinks into a corner, where a puddle's forming. He'd complained to the landlord, but that man's as helpful as a statue of Juno. The space itself is a teacher's nightmare. There's no room to move, no proper seats, just the floor, hard and cold, where the boys squat like street beggars. Gaius's stool creaks under him, threatening to collapse if he shifts too fast. The lack of light strains his eyes as he checks their work, squinting at Lucius's wobbly alpha. Straighter lines, he says, tapping the tablet. Lucius mutters something about needing a lamp, and Gaius can't argue. Elite tutors, teaching in airy villas with mosaic floors, have oil lamps and braziers. Gaius has a stub of tallow candle he's too broke to light. He thinks of that quirky curtain trick. Maybe he should beg a thicker one from a neighbour, but pride stops him. Pride, or what's left of it. Mid-morning, the street noise peaks. A mule brays outside, and a hawker's chant about fresh bread sets the boys' stomachs growling. Gaius tries a story about Theseus to keep them focused, but the room's distractions are relentless. A gust rattles the shutters, sending dust swirling, and Quintus coughs dramatically, claiming he's dying of filth. Gaius rolls his eyes. You'll survive, unlike my patients. Joke number 2, and it gets a snicker, but the room's squalor is no laughing matter. The walls seem to close in. The drips plink a maddening rhythm. Gaius wonders how anyone learns in this chaos, himself included. His own education as a slave was in a master's storeroom, cramped but quiet. This question mark. This is a battlefield. The historical reality of these makeshift schools weighs heavy. Rome's elite sent their sons to proper scholae or hired private tutors, but for shopkeepers' kids, men like Gaius were the only option. His classroom, if you can call it that, is typical. A rented nook in an insula, shared with families, artisans, and the occasional drunk asleep in the hall. The landlord charges Gaius a fortune for it, muttering about prime location. Prime for what, Gaius wonders? Catching a fever? The scholarly debate about whether these conditions harmed learning feels obvious to him. How can boys focus when they're sneezing dust and dodging drips? Yet Rome expects miracles, parents demanding their sons read like Cicero despite the chaos. By noon the heat's unbearable, the room a stew of sweat and bad tempers. Gaius assigns sums, simple addition, like 5 loaves plus 3, but Marcus flicks a pebble, hitting Titus's ear. Gaius snatches the pebble, his voice sharp. Next one lands you outside. Marcus smirks, unfazed, and Gaius feels the room's weight pressing harder. The drip plinks again, and he imagines teaching in a shady grove like those Greek philosophers. Fat chance. He's stuck here, where the air's so thick it's like breathing soup. He tries to open the shutters for a breeze, but the street's roar floods in. A vendor now shouting about miracle salves. Gaius slams them shut, muttering, "Miracle? Try silencing Rome." Joke number 3, and it's more plea than jest. The afternoon limps on, the boys' tablets a mess of smudged wax. Gaius corrects their work, his eyes burning from the dimness. Lucius's sums are wrong, and Gaius kneels to explain, only for the stool to wobble as he stands, nearly toppling him. The boys laugh, and he forces a grin, hiding his frustration. This room isn't just uncomfortable, it's hostile, undermining every lesson. He thinks of elite schools with their marble benches and quiet courtyards, and the contrast stings. His students deserve better, but Rome doesn't care. Neither do the parents, who'll judge him by their son's progress, not his impossible conditions. As dusk nears, the parents gather outside, their voices a low buzz. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets left in disarray, and slumps against the wall. The drip plinks, the shutters creak, and the room feels like a trap. He's not just teaching, he's enduring, fighting a space that seems designed to break him. Tomorrow he'll return because the alternative, starving in Rome's streets, is worse. The city's grandeur, its temples and triumphs means nothing here, in this squalid nook where Gaius battles to teach, one dusty, dripping day at a time. The morning haze clings to Rome's alleys as Gaius trudges to his insula, the city stirring with the clatter of carts and the sharp cries of vendors. Inside his cramped classroom the air feels heavy, not just with dust but with the weight of his task, teaching with next to nothing. The room's bare bones, a wobbly stool, a rag curtain, a handful of wax tablets, are all he has to shape young minds, and it's about as effective as building a temple with twigs. In ancient Rome, teachers like Gaius face a brutal reality. Limited tools turn every lesson into a test of ingenuity and endurance. The historical fact anchoring this struggle? Roman education relied heavily on oral teaching and basic materials like wax tablets, with books being rare and costly luxuries, a quirky tidbit. Some teachers used broken pottery shards, called ostraca, as cheap writing surfaces. Gaius has a few stashed for emergencies. Historians still argue whether these scarce resources fostered creativity or just crippled learning. Gaius, sharpening a splintered stylus, knows it's mostly the latter. He arranges his meagre supplies, the tablets scratched and smudged from years of use. His one scroll, a tattered fragment of Homer, is borrowed from a fellow freedman who expects it back unripped, a tall order with markers around. The stylus, whittled from a branch, is down to its last inch, its tip blunt as a senator's wit. Gaius sighs, tying his rag curtain to block the street's glare, though it does little against the noise of a hawker shouting about miracle tonics. If only they sold patience, he mutters. Joke number 1, and it's barely sunrise, but humour's all he's got to keep from screaming. The boys shuffle in, their tunics stained with breakfast porridge, their eyes heavy with boredom. Quintus flops onto the floor, kicking up dust, while Marcus smirks, already eyeing the tablets like they're targets. Gaius claps his hands, his voice hoarse from yesterday's shouting. "Tablets out. We're writing the alphabet." The boys groan, but they comply, their styluses scraping uneven lines. Gaius paces, checking their work, his sandals scuffing the gritty floor. Titus's alpha looks like a squashed bug, and Gaius kneels to correct it, only for his stylus to snap. He stares at the broken tip, feeling a pang of defeat. "Jupiter's beard, not today," he grumbles. Joke number 2, and the boys snicker, but Gaius's heart sinks. He's got no spare, and carving a new one means skipping dinner. The lack of tools is a constant thorn. Wax tablets, reusable but fragile, are his lifeline, but they're wearing thin, their surfaces pitted from countless erasures. Papyrus is a dream, too expensive for a freedman's purse, and books, bound codices or scrolls, are for the elite. Gaius once saw a library in a wealthy villa, shelves groaning with scrolls, and it felt like glimpsing Elysium. Here, he's got one Homer fragment and a fading memory of Hesiod. He supplements with oral lessons, reciting lines he learned as a slave, but the boy's attention wanders faster than a stray cat. Outside, a cart crashes, and a vendor's curse cuts through the air, pulling Lucius's gaze to the window. Gaius snaps his fingers. "Eyes here, unless you want to sell fish like that man." Teaching arithmetic is worse. Without counters or an abacus, another luxury he can't afford, Gaius uses pebbles, which Marcus inevitably flicks at Quintus. "If you have 10 pebbles and lose 4, Gaius starts, glaring at Marcus, "how many remain?" Quintus guesses 12, and Gaius pinches his nose, praying for strength. He scratches numbers in the dust with a stick, a trick he learned from a Greek tutor, but the floor's so grimy it's barely legible. The quirky ostraca idea tempts him. There's a pile of broken pottery in the courtyard, but they're sharp, and he can't risk a parent's wrath if a boy cuts himself. He thinks of that crocodile dung sunscreen vendor probably raking in coins while Gaius battles with splinters and dust. The injustice burns. Mid-morning, the heat rises, turning the room into a sweaty haze. Gaius tries a story from Homer, hoping to spark interest, but the scroll's so worn he can barely read it. He recites from memory, his voice rising over the street's din, a mule's bray, a poet's bad verse echoing from the alley. The boys listen, briefly, until Marcus interrupts. "Why is Odysseus so whiny?" The room laughs, and Gaius forces a grin. "Because he didn't have to teach you." Joke number 3, and it buys a moment of quiet, but the scroll's fragility gnaws at him. If it tears, he's lost his only text, and borrowing another means owing favours he can't repay. The historical scarcity of materials shapes every move. Elite schools had slaves to copy texts, libraries to draw from. Gaius has his wits and a dwindling stash of wax. He's creative, using chance for memorization, drawing in the dust. But it's exhausting, like bailing out a sinking ship with a spoon. The scholarly debate about whether this fostered ingenuity feels hollow. Creativity is a necessity, not a virtue, when you're teaching with nothing. Gaius wonders if his students even notice his effort. Probably not. Marcus is already carving a rude shape into his tablet, oblivious to the lesson. By noon, the room's a furnace, and the boys are restless, their tablets a mess of smudged wax. Gaius assigns a simple sentence, "Ego fellum amo." "I love the cat." Titus scoffs. "Cats hate everyone." The boys laugh, and Gaius lets it slide, too tired to fight. He corrects their work, squinting in the dim light, his broken stylus useless. He uses a pebble instead, scratching faintly, and feels like a beggar scraping for dignity. The street noise swells, a vendor now hawking Lucky Charms, and Gaius envies the man's freedom. Teaching traps him here, tethered to tools that fail him daily. The afternoon drags, and Gaius tries arithmetic again, using fingers since pebbles keep vanishing. 5 + 3, he says, holding up hands. Lucius counts wrong, and Gaius kneels, explaining slowly, his voice fraying. The dust stings his eyes, the drip from the ceiling plinks, and he feels the room's squalor closing in. He thinks of elite tutors, with their polished abacuses and fresh papyrus, and the contrast stings. His students deserve better, but Rome's economy doesn't care. Parents expect results, not excuses, and Gaius delivers, even if it means teaching with splinters and prayers. As dusk settles, Parents gather outside, their voices a low hum. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets left in disarray, and slumps on his stool, the broken stylus in his hand. The room feels emptier now, but no less oppressive. He's not just fighting ignorance, he's fighting a system that gives him nothing to work with. Tomorrow he'll carve a new stylus, beg for more wax and keep going, because quitting means starvation. Rome's glory, its marble and gold, is a distant dream in this dusty nook, where Gaius teaches with scraps, one grueling day at a time. The dawn creeps over Rome's cluttered skyline, painting the insula's cracked walls with a faint glow that does nothing to warm Gaius's weary bones. He shuffles into his classroom, the air thick with the musty scent of damp stone and the distant tang of the Tiber. His wobbly stool creaks as he sets out his battered wax tablets, but today's weight feels heavier than usual, not just the chaos of his students or the sting of Rome's scorn, but the gnawing truth that his efforts serve only a privileged few. In ancient Rome, education is a luxury, reserved for the sons of the wealthy, and Gaius, teaching in his dingy nook, is locked out of that elite world. The historical fact anchoring this reality? Roman education was deeply stratified, with formal schooling primarily for boys from affluent families, while girls and the poor were often left illiterate. A quirky tidbit: some wealthy Romans hired teachers to train their slaves in basic literacy, but only to manage household accounts, Gaius's own path to freedom. Historians still argue whether this exclusivity strengthened Rome's elite or weakened its broader society. Gaius, watching Marcus swagger in with his usual smirk, knows it just makes his job harder. The boys settle onto the dusty floor, their tunics smudged with breakfast crumbs. Marcus, the butcher's son, kicks a pebble across the room, narrowly missing Quintus's ear. Gaius claps his hands, his voice already raw. "Tablets out. We're reading Cato today." The boys groan, but Gaius presses on, unrolling his tattered scroll. It's a fragment of De Agricultura, dull as dishwater, but it's all he's got. The room's dim, the shutters rattling with every gust, and the street's noise, a vendor hawking fresh eels, drowns out his first words. Gaius raises his voice, but his mind's elsewhere, stung by the unfairness of who gets to learn. These boys, sons of shopkeepers and minor clerks, are lucky to be here at all. Most Roman children, especially girls, never see a classroom. Gaius's sister, still in a distant province, can't read a word. The thought twists like a knife. He starts the lesson, but Marcus interrupts, waving his tablet. "Why don't girls learn this stuff?" Gaius pauses, caught off guard. It's a rare moment of curiosity from the troublemaker. "Because Rome thinks boys run the world," Gaius says, half sarcastic. "Keep writing, or you'll be running to the latrines." Joke number one, and it gets a snicker, but the question lingers. Rome's elite educate their sons to lead, senators, generals, merchants, but daughters are taught to weave or marry well if they're taught anything. Gaius knows a few wealthy girls get tutors, learning poetry or Greek, but they're rare, like that crocodile dung sunscreen he keeps joking about. For the poor, education's a pipe dream, and Gaius's students, middling as they are, sit at the edge of privilege. The historical divide runs deep. Elite boys study rhetoric and philosophy in airy villas, their tutors dining on figs while Gaius scrapes by on lentils. His students, destined for shops or clerkships, get the bare minimum: reading, writing, a bit of math. Slaves, like Gaius once was, might learn enough to tally a master's accounts, but only if it serves the household. Gaius's own literacy, earned in a dusty storeroom, was a fluke, a master who needed a scribe, not a scholar. Now freed but trapped, he teaches boys who'll never touch the Senate's marble floors. The room's squalor, with its dripping ceiling and creaky shutters, mirrors their place in Rome's hierarchy, close to opportunity but not close enough. Mid-morning the heat builds, and the boys grow restless. Titus, the wine merchant's son, smudges his tablet, claiming the wax is too soft. Gaius checks it, squinting in the dim light, and sees a half-hearted alpha. "Try harder, Titus, or you'll be selling your father's vinegar forever." Joke number two, and it lands with a chuckle. But Gaius feels the weight of his words. These boys have a chance, however slim, to climb higher than their parents. The poor kids hawking bread outside, they'll stay illiterate, their futures sealed by Rome's rigid class lines. Gaius thinks of his sister again, married off to a farmer who can't read a contract. He pushes the thought down, focusing on Lucius, who's mangling Cato's prose like it's a personal vendetta. The street noise swells, a cart's wheel snaps, a vendor curses, and Gaius tries a new tactic: arithmetic. "If you sell 5 amphorae for 10 sesterces each," he begins, but Marcus cuts in. "Why not sell girls to school? More coin!" The room laughs, but Gaius's jaw tightens. He could swing his stick, but instead he leans close. "Sell your brain first, Marcus, it's barely used." Joke number 3, and it quiets the room, but Gaius feels no victory. Marcus's question, crude as it was, hits a nerve. Education's a gatekeeper, and Gaius holds the key for a select few. All boys, all with parents who can pay. The rest of Rome, girls, slaves, the poor, are locked out, their minds left to gather dust. The scholarly debate about this exclusivity stings. Did it strengthen Rome by focusing on its future leaders, or weaken it by ignoring half its people? Gaius sees the cost daily. His students, privileged as they are, barely care. Their tablets a mess of smudged wax and crooked lines. He corrects Quintus's sums, his voice soft but firm, knowing this boy might one day run a shop while others, with no chance to learn, beg in the streets. The unfairness gnaws at him, but he's powerless to change it. Rome's system is as unyielding as the Colosseum's stones, and Gaius is just a cog teaching those the city deems worthy. By afternoon, the room's a furnace, the boys squirming like eels. Gaius tries a story from Homer, hoping to spark interest, but the scroll's so worn it's crumbling. He recites from memory, his voice rising over the street's din, a poet's bad verse, a mule's bray. The boys listen, briefly, until Titus yawns. This is boring. Gaius swallows his frustration. He's teaching boys who don't see the value, while others who'd kill for this chance are ignored. The elite tutors, with their rich students and polished texts, don't face this divide. Gaius, stuck in his insula, does, and it's another weight on his already heavy load. As dusk settles, parents gather outside, their voices sharp with expectation. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets a chaotic pile, and slumps against the wall. The room's dim, the drip plinks, and he feels the sting of Rome's priorities. He's shaping minds, but only the ones Rome allows. Tomorrow he'll face the same boys, the same limits, because quitting isn't an option. The city's grandeur, its temples, its triumphs, means nothing here, where Gaius teaches a chosen few in a world that locks so many out. The morning sun barely pierces the smog over Rome's sprawling insulae, casting a sickly glow into Gaius's classroom as he drags his wobbly stool into place. The air hums with the city's restless pulse. Vendors shouting, carts rattling, a stray dog yapping in the alley. Inside, the room feels like a pressure cooker. Not just from the heat, but from the clash of ideas Gaius must navigate. Teaching in ancient Rome isn't just about wrangling boys like Marcus or scraping by with broken styluses. It's a battlefield of philosophical disputes over what education should be. Gaius, caught in the crossfire of curriculum wars, struggles to balance competing demands while keeping his students' attention. The historical fact grounding this chaos: Roman education lacked a standardized curriculum, with teachers blending Greek and Roman traditions, often clashing over priorities like rhetoric versus practical skills. A quirky tidbit. Some Romans believed memorizing epic poetry could ward off bad spirits. Gaius wishes it warded off Marcus's pranks instead. Historians still argue whether these curriculum debates enriched Roman learning or just confused teachers like Gaius. He's leaning toward confusion, especially today. Gaius unrolls his tattered Homer scroll, its edges fraying like his patience, and sets out the wax tablets. The boys shuffle in, Quintus trailing garlic fumes, Titus yawning as if sleep is his true calling. Marcus predictably smirks, already plotting mischief. Gaius claps his hands, his voice cutting through the street's din, a hawker's cry about lucky amulets. "We're reading today," he announces, holding up the scroll. The boys groan, and Gaius feels the weight of his task. Parents want different things. Marcus's father demands arithmetic for the butcher shop, Quintus's mother insists on poetry for refinement, and Titus's father wants something useful without specifying what. Gaius juggles it all, trapped in a philosophical tug-of-war he didn't start. He starts with Homer, hoping the Iliad's drama will hook them. Achilles rages by the ships, he begins, but Marcus interrupts. Why is he so mad? Sounds like you yesterday. The room laughs, and Gaius forces a grin. Because he didn't have to teach you, Marcus. Keep writing. Joke number 1, and it buys a moment of quiet, but the interruption stings. Gaius loves Greek literature. Homer, Hesiod, the poets who shaped his own education as a slave, but many Romans see it as foreign fluff. The elite value Greek for its prestige, training their sons in rhetoric to charm the Senate. Gaius's students, destined for shops or clerkships, need practical skills, yet parents still demand a sprinkle of culture, like that quirky poetry as spirit ward idea. It's a mess, and Gaius is the one untangling it. The historical lack of a standard curriculum is a daily headache. Rome's education blends Greek ideals, philosophy, literature, with Roman pragmatism, law, accounting, civic duty. Elite tutors debate lofty questions. Should boys master Plato or Cato? Gaius, teaching shopkeepers' sons, faces cruder demands. Can they write a contract? Recite a proverb? He tries both, reciting Homer while sneaking in vocabulary, but the boys' tablets are a disaster of smudged wax and crooked letters. Lucius mangles a line and Gaius corrects him, squinting in the dim light. The shutters rattle, letting in a gust of dust and the scent of roasting chickpeas from the street. Focus, Gaius snaps, wishing he could afford a proper scroll, not this crumbling relic. Mid-morning, the heat thickens and Gaius shifts to arithmetic, hoping numbers will pacify the parents. If you sell 10 loaves for 2 sesterces each, he starts, but Quintus yawns. Boring. Tell us about gladiators. Gaius pinches his nose. Gladiators aren't on any curriculum, but the boys perk up at the mention, proof of Rome's love for spectacle over substance. He compromises, framing sums as gladiator winnings. But Marcus flicks a pebble, hitting Titus's ear. Gaius snatches it, his voice sharp. Next one, and you're copying Homer till sunset. It's a bluff, he can't stay late. But the philosophical clash gnaws at him. Should he drill practical skills or inspire with epic tales? Rome doesn't care, as long as the boys don't embarrass their families. The scholarly debate about curriculum's impact feels personal. Did the mix of Greek and Roman traditions create versatile citizens, or just muddled ones? Gaius sees both sides. His students need to count coins, but poetry might spark something deeper, if they'd listen. He thinks of that crocodile dung sunscreen vendor, peddling nonsense yet earning more than him. Maybe he should teach sunscreen math instead. He snorts at the thought, joke number 2. But the humour fades fast. The curriculum wars aren't abstract. They're his daily grind, forcing him to be poet, accountant, and disciplinarian all at once, with tools as flimsy as his scroll. By noon, the room's a furnace, the boys squirming like fish on a hook. Gaius tries a Roman proverb, festina lente, make haste slowly. It's practical wisdom, but Marcus scoffs. Sounds like my dad's ox. The room laughs, and Gaius lets it slide, too tired to fight. He assigns the proverb for copying, hoping it sticks, but the tablets are a mess, wax melting in the heat. The street noise swells, a cart crashes, a poet's verse echoes, and Gaius feels the curriculum slipping away. He's not teaching, he's improvising, stitching together Greek ideals and Roman demands with no clear guide. Elite tutors, with their libraries and patrons, pick their battles. Gaius fights them all, in a room that smells like defeat. The afternoon drags, and Gaius tries rhetoric, a nod to the elite's obsession. Speak as if addressing the forum, he says, but Lucius's attempt sounds like a hiccuping goat. The boys howl and Gaius rubs his temples. Keep trying, or you'll be bleating in the markets. Joke number 3, and it quiets them, but the exercise feels futile. Rhetoric's for senators' sons, not these boys, yet parents want it, chasing status they'll never reach. Gaius thinks of his own training, memorizing Greek verses in a master's storeroom. It gave him freedom, but not respect. His students might fare better, but only if he can bridge the gap between poetry and profit. As dusk settles, parents lurk outside, their voices sharp with expectation. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets a chaotic pile, and slumps against the wall. The drip plinks, the shutters creak, and he feels the curriculum war's toll. He's not shaping minds, he's refereeing a clash of ideals, caught between Rome's past and its practical present. Tomorrow he'll juggle again, Homer, sums, proverbs, because quitting means starvation. Rome's grandeur, its marble forums and golden eagles, is a distant mirage in this dusty nook, where Gaius fights to teach, one fractured lesson at a time. The dawn's faint glow seeps into Rome's cluttered alleys, where the insula's sagging walls loom over Gaius as he trudges to his classroom. The air carries the sharp sting of smoke and the faint reek of last night's garum, a reminder that the city never rests. Inside his cramped nook, Gaius sets out his worn wax tablets, the weight of another day pressing on his shoulders. Teaching in ancient Rome isn't just a battle against rowdy boys, scarce tools, or philosophical debates. It's a constant struggle under the watchful eyes of demanding parents. These elite wannabe shopkeepers and clerks hover over every lesson, their expectations as heavy as the humid air. The historical fact grounding this pressure: Roman parents, especially the emerging middle class, saw education as a status symbol, pushing teachers like Gaius to deliver results despite impossible conditions. A quirky tidbit. Some parents sent slaves to spy on lessons, reporting back on a teacher's every word. Gaius has caught one lurking in the stairwell. Historians still argue whether this parental meddling improved learning or just drove teachers to despair. Gaius, dodging Marcus's latest smirk, leans toward despair. The boys shuffle in, their tunics rumpled, their chatter louder than the street's morning clamour. A vendor's cry about fresh figs echoing through the shutters. Gaius claps his hands, his voice already fraying. Tablets out. We're writing proverbs. He scratches carpe diem, seize the day, on his own tablet, hoping it inspires focus. Fat chance. Marcus, the butcher's son, is already whispering to Quintus, probably plotting a pebble toss. Gaius feels the parent's presence even now. Marcus's father, a burly man with a cleaver-sharp glare, cornered him yesterday, demanding his son master arithmetic, or else. Or else what? Gaius doesn't want to know. Focus, Marcus, he snaps, unless you want your father adding up your failures. Joke number 1, and it gets a nervous chuckle, but the pressure's no laughing matter. These parents aren't elite, but they act like it. Rome's growing middle class, butchers, bakers, wine merchants, crave respectability, and literacy is their ticket. They send their sons to Gaius, expecting miracles. Turn Marcus into a clerk, Quintus into a poet, Titus into something vague but impressive. Never mind the dripping ceiling or Gaius's broken stylus. The demands pile up. More poetry, more math, fewer Greek nonsense stories. Quintus's mother, a baker with flour-dusted hands, insists her son recite Virgil to elevate their name. Gaius tried, but Quintus mangled the lines worse than a storm-tossed ship. He thinks of that crocodile dung sunscreen vendor free from such scrutiny. Maybe I should teach sunscreen recipes, he mutters. Joke number 2 lost in the dust. The historical reality of parental oversight is relentless. Elite families hire tutors they can control, but men like Gaius, teaching the middling sort, face a mob of expectations. Parents don't just want results, they want to dictate how Gaius gets them. Last week Titus's father, the wine merchant, stormed in, claiming Gaius's Homer lessons were useless for a future in trade. Gaius pointed out that reading contracts requires literacy, but the man scoffed, muttering about fancy freedmen. The sting of his status, former slave, forever outsider, burns, but Gaius swallows it. He needs their coins, even if they come with lectures. The quirky slave spy tidbit haunts him. He's seen a shadow in the hall, probably Lucius's father's servant scribbling notes. What's next? A wax tablet report card. Mid-morning the heat creeps in, and Gaius shifts to arithmetic, hoping to appease Marcus's father. If you sell 6 amphorae for 10 sesterces each, he starts, but Quintus interrupts. My ma says numbers are for slaves. Gaius rubs his temples. Quintus's mother wants poetry, not math, and Gaius is caught in the middle. Tell your mother poets still pay taxes, he says, forcing a smile. Joke number 3, and it lands softly, but the boys' tablets are a mess, smudged wax and crooked numbers. Gaius corrects them, squinting in the dim light, the shutters rattling with a gust. Outside, a cart crashes, and a vendor's curse cuts through the air, mirroring Gaius's mood. He's not teaching, he's mediating, balancing parental whims in a room that feels like a trap. The scholarly debate about parental pressure hits home. Did it drive better outcomes or just break teachers? Gaius feels the fracture daily. Parents judge his every move, their voices echoing even when they're absent. He tries a compromise, reciting a Roman proverb, Festina Lente, while sneaking in sums. The boys copy it, half-hearted, and Gaius wonders if they'll ever grasp its meaning. Haste with care. He doubts it, but he keeps going, driven by the fear of losing students. If Marcus's father pulls him, Gaius's rent goes unpaid, and the landlord's already circling like a hawk. The street noise swells, a poet's bad verse now, and Gaius envies the man's freedom. At least poets don't answer to bakers and butchers. By noon, the room's a furnace, the boys squirming like eels. Gaius tries a story from Cato, hoping its Roman grit will satisfy Titus's father. The tale of duty falls flat and Lucius yawns. This is worse than cleaning latrines. Gaius ignores him, but the parents' demands weigh heavier. They want their sons to shine, but they don't trust Gaius to choose the path. He thinks of elite tutors, whose rich patrons might meddle but at least pay well. Gaius gets scraps, coins, barley, a jug of oil if he's lucky, and endless criticism. The slave spy rumour nags at him. He glances at the doorway, half expecting a skulking figure. Nothing, just the drips plink and the shutters creak. The afternoon drags and Gaius assigns a sentence. Pater meus laborat. My father works. It's simple, but Marcus scrawls it sloppily, daring Gaius to complain. Gaius corrects it, his voice firm but tired, knowing Marcus's father will check the tablet tonight. The butcher's glare looms in his mind, a reminder that failure isn't an option. He moves to Lucius, whose sums are wrong, and explains slowly, his throat raw from shouting over the street's din, a vendor now hawking miracle salves. Gaius feels like he needs a miracle to survive this scrutiny, this room, this life. As dusk settles, parents gather outside, their voices sharp with impatience. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets a chaotic pile, and braces for the onslaught. Marcus's father barges in, tablet in hand, pointing at a smudged line. "This is your teaching?" Gaius nods, promising improvement, his voice hollow. The man grunts and leaves, and Gaius slumps against the wall. The drip plinks, the room darkens, and he feels the parents' weight crushing him. He's not shaping minds, he's appeasing egos, caught in a web of demands he can't escape. Tomorrow, he'll face their judgment again, because in Rome, teaching means serving, and Gaius serves at the mercy of those who pay. The morning light struggles through Rome's smoggy haze, casting faint shadows across the insula's crumbling walls as Gaius shuffles to his classroom. The air is thick with the stench of stale wine and the distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, a reminder that the city churns on, indifferent to his plight. Inside his cramped nook, Gaius arranges his battered wax tablets, but the weight of today's burden isn't just the usual chaos of Marcus's pranks or parental demands. It's the precariousness of his livelihood. In ancient Rome, teachers like Gaius live at the mercy of fickle patrons, their jobs as unstable as a cart on a broken wheel. The historical fact anchoring this insecurity: teachers often depended on wealthy patrons or parental fees, with no contracts or guarantees, leaving them vulnerable to sudden dismissal. A quirky tidbit. Some teachers offered free lessons to curry favour with rich families. Hoping for a patronage jackpot, Gaius can't afford such gambles. Historians still argue whether this patronage system empowered teachers or just chained them to whims. Gaius, eyeing his empty coin pouch, knows it's the latter. He sets out his tattered Homer scroll, its edges curling like his hopes, and braces for the boys' arrival. The room's damp walls glisten with a fresh drip, and the shutters rattle as a vendor outside hawks golden honey. Gaius ties his rag curtain tighter, muttering, "Honey won't pay my rent." Joke number one, and it's barely dawn, but humours his only shield against the dread of losing his income. The boys trickle in, Marcus leading with his usual smirk, Quintus trailing garlic fumes. Gaius claps his hands, his voice hoarse. "Tablets out. We're writing today." The boys groan, but he's distracted, his mind on the landlord's latest threat: pay up or sleep in the street. His income depends on parents like Marcus's father, the butcher, who pays late, if at all. The lesson begins with a simple sentence: Ego fellum amo. I love the cat. Gaius hopes it's neutral enough to avoid trouble, but Marcus scrawls it sloppily, daring a rebuke. Gaius corrects him, his eyes flicking to the doorway, half expecting a parent to barge in. Last week, Titus's father, the wine merchant, threatened to pull his son over slow progress, as if Gaius could turn Titus into Cicero overnight. Losing one student could tip him into ruin. Rent, food, even his one candle stub depend on these fees. He thinks of that crocodile dung sunscreen vendor free from such fragility. Maybe I should sell miracles instead, he mutters. Joke number 2, and it gets a snicker, but the fear lingers. The historical reality of patronage is a noose around Gaius's neck. Elite tutors often secure steady patrons, wealthy senators or equestrians who fund their work. Gaius, teaching shopkeepers' sons, relies on sporadic fees, bartered goods, or promises that vanish like morning mist. Lucius's mother, the baker, paid him in bread last month, but it was stale as her excuses. Quintus's mother offered a jug of oil, then forgot to deliver. Gaius's only patron is the landlord, who'd rather evict him than wait. The quirky free lesson trick tempts him. Teach a rich man's son for free, hope for a sponsor, but he can't spare the time, not with 10 boys to wrangle, and a stomach that growls louder than the street dogs. Mid-morning the heat builds, and Gaius shifts to arithmetic. If you have 10 sesterces and spend 3, he starts, but Quintus interrupts. Why not just borrow more? Gaius forces a smile. Because Quintus, creditors eat men like me. Joke number 3, and it lands with a chuckle, but the truth stings. Gaius owes the landlord 2 months' rent, and every late payment from parents tightens the screws. The street noise swells, a cart crashes, a vendor curses, and Gaius feels his job's fragility like a blade at his throat. If Marcus's father pulls him, or Titus's, he's done. No patron will swoop in to save a freedman teaching in an insula's corner. The scholarly debate about patronage cuts deep. Did it give teachers freedom or just servitude? Gaius knows it's a leash, yanking him between parents' whims and the landlord's greed. He tries a story from Homer, hoping to distract the boys, but the scroll's so worn it tears slightly as he unrolls it. He recites from memory, his voice rising over a poet's bad verse echoing outside. The boys listen, briefly, until Marcus flicks a pebble, hitting Lucius's ear. Gaius snatches it, his voice sharp. 1 more, and you're out. It's a bluff. He needs Marcus's fees, but the boy backs down. Gaius's heart pounds, not from anger but fear. 1 wrong move, 1 angry parent, and his classroom's empty. By noon, the room's a furnace, the boys squirming, their tablets a mess of smudged wax. Gaius corrects Titus's sums, his hands shaking slightly. He's not just teaching, he's gambling, each lesson a bet that parents will pay. The drip plinks, the shutters creak, and he feels the weight of his dependence. Elite tutors, backed by patrons, teach in villas with mosaics. Gaius begs for coins in a room that smells like defeat. He thinks of the free lesson gambit again. Maybe a rich merchant's son could change his luck, but the risk is too high. He's trapped, his livelihood tied to parents who see him as hired help, not a teacher. The afternoon drags and Gaius tries a proverb, festina lente. Make haste slowly. The boys copy it, half-hearted, and Gaius wonders if they'll ever grasp its irony. He's rushing to keep his job, yet every step feels like sinking. The street noise peaks, a vendor now shouting about Lucky Charms, and Gaius envies the man's independence. Parents' expectations loom like storm clouds. Faster progress, better handwriting, more culture. He delivers barely, his voice raw, his tools failing. Lucius's mother wants poetry, but Gaius's scroll is crumbling. He recites anyway, praying it's enough to keep her son enrolled. As dusk settles, parents gather outside, their voices sharp. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets a chaotic pile, and braces for complaints. Marcus's father looms in the doorway grumbling about wasted time. Gaius nods, promising progress, his stomach knotting. The man leaves, and Gaius slumps against the wall. The drips plink a mocking rhythm. He's not shaping minds, he's clinging to a job that could vanish tomorrow. Rome's glory, its temples and triumphs means nothing in this dusty nook, where Gaius teaches at the mercy of those who barely pay, one precarious day at a time. The dawn creeps over Rome's jagged rooftops, its faint light barely penetrating the insula's grimy shutters as Gaius shuffles into his classroom. The air is heavy with the sour tang of spilled wine and the distant clatter of market carts, a reminder that the city hums with life while Gaius battles despair. His wobbly stool groans as he sets out his battered wax tablets. But today's burden isn't just the usual chaos of Marcus's pranks or the fragility of his income. It's the constant sting of public humiliation. In ancient Rome, teachers like Gaius are not just underpaid and overworked. They're mocked, their efforts fodder for the city's sharp tongues. The historical fact anchoring this reality. Teachers, especially freedmen like Gaius, were often ridiculed as lowly figures, their status barely above entertainers or street vendors. A quirky tidbit? Some Romans scrawled insults about teachers on public walls, much like the graffiti Gaius saw mocking his rival Lucius. Historians still argue whether this ridicule reflected genuine contempt, or just Rome's habit of mocking anyone who served the public. Gaius, catching a sneer from a passing merchant, feels it's both. He ties his rag curtain, trying to muffle the street's roar. A vendor's cry about fresh olives, and braces for the boy's arrival. The room's damp walls glisten, the drip plinks, and Gaius's heart sinks. Yesterday at the market, a baker called him that scribbler who starves for letters, laughing as if Gaius's work were a jest. The insult still burns, a reminder that Rome sees him as a punchline, not a teacher. The boys shuffle in, Marcus leading with his usual smirk, Quintus trailing garlic fumes. Gaius claps his hands, his voice raw. Tablets out, we're writing proverbs. He scratches Carpe Diem on his tablet, hoping it distracts from the graffiti he saw this morning. Gaius teaches pigs to read. He pretends not to care, but it stings like a wasp. The lesson begins, but Marcus interrupts, mimicking the baker's tone. Why bother, teacher? Nobody respects you. The room laughs, and Gaius's jaw tightens. He forces a grin. Respect's overrated, Marcus. Keep writing or you'll be sweeping my floor. Joke number 1, and it quiets them. But the boys' words echo the city's scorn. Rome loves its poets and orators, but teachers like Gaius, grinding away in insulae, are fair game for mockery. He thinks of that crocodile dung sunscreen vendor, peddling nonsense yet dodging the insults Gaius endures. The contrast is galling. Sunscreen's a scam, but teaching's a service, and Rome spits on it. The historical weight of this ridicule is crushing. Elite tutors teaching in villas might escape the worst, but men like Gaius, serving shopkeepers' sons, are easy targets. Freedmen carry a stigma, former slaves, never fully Roman, and Gaius feels it daily. Last week, a fruit vendor snickered as he passed, muttering about freedmen playing scholar. Gaius ignored him, but the jabs pile up, each one chipping at his dignity. The quirky graffiti tidbit haunts him. He's seen his name scrawled on walls paired with crude drawings. He wonders if Marcus saw it, if that's why the boy's bolder today. Gaius grips his stick, not to swing but to steady himself, and pushes on, reciting a line from Cato. Virtus in action consistit. Virtue lies in action. The irony's bitter. He acts, but Rome laughs. Mid-morning the heat thickens and Gaius shifts to arithmetic. If you sell 10 loaves for 2 sesterces each, he starts, but Quintus yawns. Nobody cares about loaves, teacher. The boys snicker, and Gaius feels the room slip. He's not just fighting boredom, he's fighting a culture that mocks his craft. Care about this, or you'll be selling air in the forum, he snaps. Joke number 2, and it lands, but the sting of Quintus's words lingers. The boys mimic the city's tone, their taunts a mirror of the market's jeers. Gaius corrects Titus's sums, squinting in the dim light, the shutters rattling with a gust. Outside, a poet's bad verse echoes, and Gaius envies him. Poets get applause, teachers get graffiti. The scholarly debate about Rome's ridicule culture cuts deep. Was it contempt for teaching, or just a habit of mocking the lowly? Gaius knows it's both. Rome exalts power, senators, generals, men with gold, while teachers, vital but invisible, are sport. He tries a story from Homer, hoping to spark interest, but Marcus interrupts. Why read this? Nobody respects old tales. Gaius's patience phrase. They'll respect you less if you can't read a contract, he retorts, his voice sharp. The boy's quiet, but the insult's echo, nobody respects, hits like a stone. Gaius feels the city's eyes on him, judging, laughing, even here in his dusty nook. By noon, the room's a furnace, the boys squirming, their tablets a mess of smudged wax. Gaius assigns a proverb, festina lente. Make haste slowly. Lucius mangles it, and Gaius corrects him, his throat raw from shouting over the street's din, a vendor now hawking miracle salves. He thinks of the graffiti again, the baker's sneer, the merchant's laugh. Each jab strips away a piece of him, yet he teaches on, because quitting means starving. The drip plinks, the shutters creak, and Gaius feels like he's drowning in Rome's scorn. Elite tutors shielded by patrons don't face this. Gaius, exposed, takes every hit. The afternoon drags, and Gaius tries rhetoric, a nod to parental demands for culture. Speak as if in the forum, he says, but Titus's attempt is a mumble. The boys laugh, and Gaius rubs his temples. Keep trying, or you'll be begging in the forum instead. Joke number 3, and it buys a moment of quiet, but the weight of ridicule presses harder. He's not just teaching, he's performing, proving his worth to a city that doesn't care. The parents lurking outside will judge his progress, but so will the market crowd, ready with another quip about scribblers or pig teachers. As dusk settles, parents gather, their voices sharp. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets a chaotic pile, and braces for complaints. Marcus's father grumbles about wasted time, echoing the market's mockery. Gaius nods, promising better, his voice hollow. The man leaves, and Gaius slumps against the wall. The drips plink a mocking rhythm. He's not shaping minds, he's enduring a city that laughs at his labour. Tomorrow, he'll face the same sneers, the same graffiti, because in Rome, teaching isn't a calling, it's a gauntlet, and Gaius runs it with the target on his back. The morning sun struggles through Rome's haze, barely illuminating the insula's damp walls as Gaius drags himself to his classroom. The air is thick with the acrid bite of burning oil, and the distant shouts of dockworkers by the Tiber, a reminder that the city grinds on while Gaius wilts. His wobbly stool creaks as he sets out his worn wax tablets, but today's burden is heavier than Marcus's pranks or Rome's ridicule. It's the toll on his body and spirit. Teaching in ancient Rome isn't just a mental slog, it's a physical and emotional gauntlet, with exhaustion and illness lurking like thieves in the forum. The historical fact anchoring this misery? Teachers, especially low-status ones like Gaius, worked long hours in poor conditions, often falling ill from overwork and bad air. A quirky tidbit. Some Romans believed teachers caught scholars' cough from dusty scrolls. Gaius's raw throat suggests they weren't wrong. Historians still argue whether these health risks were just part of urban life or unique to teachers' grueling schedules. Gaius, coughing as he ties his rag curtain, feels they're uniquely his. The boys shuffle in, Marcus smirking, Quintus reeking of garlic, Titus yawning like he's auditioning for a statue. Gaius claps his hands, his voice a rasp. Tablets out, we're writing proverbs. He scratches carpe diem on his tablet, but a cough cuts him short, doubling him over. The boys snicker, and Marcus mutters, "Teacher's dying already." Gaius forces a grin. "Not yet, Marcus, but you're speeding it up." Joke number 1, and it buys a moment of quiet, but his chest aches, a dull burn from weeks of shouting in this damp, dusty nook. The room's air is foul, thick with mildew and the street's stench. A vendor's cry about fresh fish, mingling with the reek of rotting scraps. Gaius's eyes sting, his head throbs, and he wonders how long he can keep this up. The historical reality of teaching's toll is brutal. Gaius starts at dawn, teaching until dusk with no breaks except when the boys wrestle in the courtyard. The insula's damp walls and dripping ceiling breed sickness. His cough's been nagging for weeks, worsened by the dust from his crumbling scroll. Elite tutors, teaching in airy villas, might dodge these woes, but Gaius, stuck in this squalid corner, breathes illness daily. His diet doesn't help. Lentils and stale bread, when he can afford them, barely fuel his frame. He thinks of that crocodile dung sunscreen vendor, plump from his profits, and mutters, "Maybe I should sell quack cures instead." Joke number 2, lost in a cough, but the thought of food twists his empty stomach. Mid-morning, the heat rises, turning the room into a sweaty haze. Gaius shifts to arithmetic, his voice cracking. "If you sell 10 amphorae for 5 sesterces each," he starts, but Quintus interrupts. "You sound like a sick mule." The boys laugh, and Gaius's temper flares, but another cough stops him. He grips his stick, not to swing but to steady himself, his legs shaky from exhaustion. The long hours are killing him. Teaching, correcting, shouting over the street's din, a cart's creak, a poet's bad verse. His body's betraying him, and the quirky scholar's cough feels real, each breath a struggle through dust and damp. He corrects Titus's sums, squinting in the dim light, his head pounding like a drum. The scholarly debate about health risks cuts deep. Were teachers uniquely vulnerable, or was Rome just a sickly city? Gaius knows his job's the culprit. The insula's bad air, the relentless schedule, the stress of pleasing parents, all grind him down. Last week he fainted in the market, waking to a crowd's stares and a vendor's quip about fainting scholars. The memory stings, but he pushes on, assigning a sentence. Pater meus laborat. My father works. Lucius mangles it, and Gaius corrects him, his voice a whisper. The boys notice his pallor, and Marcus, for once, stays quiet, maybe sensing Gaius's frailty. It's no comfort. Gaius needs their fees, not their pity. By noon, the room's a furnace, the boys squirming, their tablets smudged with wax. Gaius tries a story from Homer, hoping to distract them, but his cough interrupts, harsh and rattling. The boys wince, and Gaius feels exposed, his weakness on display. The shutters rattle, letting in a gust of street dust, and he thinks of elite tutors, breathing clean air in villas. His classroom, with its dripping ceiling and foul air, is a death trap. He leans against the wall, dizzy, and mutters, "Keep writing, or I'll haunt you as a ghost." Joke number 3, and it gets a nervous laugh, but Gaius feels the truth. He's fading, worn thin by Rome's demands. The afternoon drags, and Gaius's strength ebbs. He assigns proverbs, his hand trembling as he scratches corrections. The street noise peaks, a vendor now hawking miracle tonics, and Gaius envies the man's energy. His own is gone, drained by hours of standing, shouting, surviving. The parents' expectations loom, their coin's his lifeline, but even they can't cure his cough or ease his aching bones. He thinks of his days as a slave, fed and sheltered, and wonders if freedom's worth this slow decay. The scholarly debate feels personal. Teaching's killing him, and Rome doesn't care. As dusk settles, parents gather outside, their voices sharp. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets a chaotic pile and braces for complaints. Marcus's father grumbles about slow progress, eyeing Gaius's pale face. Gaius nods, promising better, his cough muffled by a clenched fist. The man leaves, and Gaius slumps against the wall, the drips plink a mocking rhythm. He's not just teaching, he's fighting a losing battle against his own body, worn down by a city that demands everything and gives nothing. Tomorrow he'll drag himself back because quitting means starvation, but each day chips away at what's left of him. The dawn's feeble light barely reaches the insula's shadowed alley, where Gaius trudges through Rome's waking clamour, his sandals scuffing the uneven cobblestones. The air carries the sharp reek of burning charcoal and the faint tang of spilled garum, a reminder that the city thrives while Gaius withers. Inside his cramped classroom, he sets out his battered wax tablets, his cough echoing in the damp air, but today's burden isn't just his failing health or the sting of public scorn, it's the bitter rivalries among teachers themselves. In ancient Rome, educators like Gaius don't just fight students, parents, or poverty. They compete with each other in a cutthroat struggle for survival, fueling feuds that sap their strength. The historical fact anchoring this tension: teachers, especially freedmen, competed fiercely for students and patrons, with no guild or system to protect them. A quirky tidbit? Some teachers sabotaged rivals by spreading rumours or stealing their scrolls. Gaius suspects his missing stylus wasn't an accident. Historians still argue whether these rivalries sharpened teaching or just fractured an already fragile profession. Gaius, eyeing the graffiti mocking his rival Lucius, feels it's the latter. He ties his rag curtain, muffling the street's din, a vendor's cry about fresh figs, and braces for the boys' arrival. The room's walls glisten with damp, the drip plinks, and Gaius's chest aches with each breath. His rivalry with Lucius, a fellow freedman teaching nearby, gnaws at him. Last week, Gaius saw new graffiti. Lucius teaches donkeys to bray. He snorted then, but now he wonders if Lucius scrawled Gaius teaches pigs to read in retaliation. The thought sours his mood as the boys shuffle in, Marcus smirking, Quintus trailing garlic fumes, Gaius claps his hands, his voice a rasp. Tablets out. We're writing today. He scratches Festina Lente, make haste slowly, on his tablet, but his eyes dart to the doorway, half expecting Lucius to spy. The lesson begins, but Marcus interrupts, waving his tablet. Heard Lucius's class is better? Gaius's jaw tightens, sensing a jab planted by gossip. Lucius can teach pebbles for all I care, he snaps. Right, or you'll be sweeping his floor. Joke number 1, and it quiets the boys, but the rumour stings. Lucius, a wiry Greek freedman, teaches in a nearby insula, luring parents with promises of fancy Greek rhetoric. Gaius loses sleep over it. Every student Lucius gains is a coin Gaius can't earn. The landlord's threats loom, and Gaius can't afford to lose Marcus or Titus to a rival. He thinks of that crocodile dung sunscreen vendor free from such feuds. Maybe I should sell quackery instead, he mutters. Joke number 2, lost in a cough. The historical reality of teacher rivalries is a knife's edge. With no formal system, teachers scramble for students, their livelihoods tied to reputation and numbers. Elite tutors, backed by patrons, avoid this fray, but men like Gaius and Lucius claw for scraps. Gaius heard Lucius badmouthed him to Titus's father, claiming Gaius's Homer lessons are outdated. Gaius retaliated, whispering to Quintus's mother that Lucius skips arithmetic. It's petty, but survival demands it. The quirky sabotage tidbit feels too real. Last month, Gaius's borrowed Hesiod scroll vanished, and he suspects Lucius's hand. He can't prove it, but the loss cost him a week's lessons, and parents noticed. The street noise swells, a cart crashes, a vendor curses, and Gaius feels the rivalry's weight, as heavy as his cough. Mid-morning the heat thickens and Gaius shifts to arithmetic. If you sell 10 loaves for 2 sesterces each, he starts, but Quintus yawns. Lucius does gladiator math. Gaius's temper flares, but another cough stops him. Lucius can count gladiator corpses, he retorts. Focus. Joke number 3, and it lands, but the mention of Lucius burns. Gaius knows Lucius's tricks. Flashy stories, bribed figs for students, draw parents' eyes. Gaius can't compete. His purse is empty, his scroll crumbling. He corrects Titus's sums, squinting in the dim light, the shutters rattling with a gust. The drip plinks, and Gaius imagines confronting Lucius, demanding his stylus back. He won't. Feuds cost time he doesn't have. The scholarly debate about rivalries cuts deep. Did competition hone teachers or just divide them? Gaius sees only division. He and Lucius could share scrolls, trade tips, but mistrust runs too deep. Rome's dog-eat-dog ethos pits them against each other, their classrooms battlegrounds for survival. Gaius tries a story from Homer, his voice cracking, hoping to outshine Lucius's tales. The boys listen, briefly, until Marcus flicks a pebble, hitting Lucius's namesake. Gaius snatches it, his cough worsening. Next one, and you're copying lines till dawn. It's a bluff. He's too weak to enforce it, but the boy's quiet. Gaius feels Lucius's shadow stealing his students, his peace. By noon, the room's a furnace. The boys squirming, their tablets smudged with wax. Gaius assigns a sentence. Pater meus labora. My father works. Lucius's student mangles it, and Gaius corrects him, his hand trembling. The street noise peaks, a poet's bad verse echoes, and Gaius envies the poet's solitude. Rivalries drain him, each rumour a wound. He heard Lucius boasts of 10 students. Gaius has 8, and losing one could break him. The scholarly debate feels personal. Competition doesn't sharpen him. It dulls his spirit, already worn by coughs and scorn. The afternoon drags, and Gaius tries rhetoric, a nod to parental demands. Speak as if in the forum, he says, but Titus mumbles, Lucius does better speeches. Gaius's chest tightens, not from cough but rage. He leans close. Lucius can speak to mules. Try again. The boys laugh, but Gaius feels no victory. He's fighting a ghost, Lucius's reputation haunting every lesson. The drip plinks, the shutters creak, and Gaius wonders if sabotage is worth it. Maybe steal Lucius's scroll, level the field. He pushes the thought away, too tired for schemes, too sick for fights. As dusk settles, parents gather outside, their voices sharp. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets a chaotic pile, and braces for complaints. Marcus's father grumbles, mentioning Lucius's better lessons. Gaius nods, promising progress, his cough muffled. The man leaves, and Gaius slumps against the wall, the drips plink a mocking rhythm. He's not just teaching, he's warring with rivals who steal his breath as surely as his cough. Tomorrow he'll face Lucius's shadow again, because in Rome, teaching is a lonely fight, and Gaius battles on all fronts, one wheezing day at a time. The dawn's pale glow barely touches Rome's cluttered alleys, where the insula's sagging walls stand as silent witnesses to Gaius's endless toil. The air is heavy with the damp chill of morning and the faint reek of yesterday's fish sauce, a reminder that the city pulses on, indifferent to his fading presence. Gaius shuffles into his classroom, his cough a harsh rasp, his hands trembling as he sets out his battered wax tablets. The weight of today's burden isn't just his sickness, the sting of rivalries or Rome's mockery. It's the crushing realization that his work, his life's labour, will vanish into history's shadows. In ancient Rome, teachers like Gaius shape minds but leave no legacy, their names forgotten as swiftly as a market's chatter fades. The historical fact anchoring this truth: few teachers, especially freedmen like Gaius, were recorded in Roman annals, their contributions overshadowed by senators and poets. A quirky tidbit? Some teachers scratch their names on classroom walls, a futile bid for remembrance. Gaius hasn't dared, fearing more graffiti. Historians still argue whether this obscurity diminished their impact or just reflected Rome's obsession with glory. Gaius, correcting Marcus's smudged tablet, knows it's a wound that cuts deep. He ties his rag curtain, muffling the street's clamour, a vendor's cry about sweet figs, and braces for the boys' arrival. The room's damp walls glisten, the drip plinks, and Gaius's chest burns with each breath. His rival Lucius's taunts echo in his mind, but a deeper ache overshadows them. No one will remember his lessons, his struggle. The boys shuffle in, Marcus smirking, Quintus trailing garlic fumes, Titus slumping like a sack of grain. Gaius claps his hands, his voice a frail whisper. Tablets out, we're writing today. He scratches Carpe Diem, seize the day, on his tablet, the words mocking his own unheeded years. He sees nothing but exhaustion, teaching boys who'll forget him as they grow into butchers and clerks. The lesson begins, but Marcus yawns. What's the point? Nobody cares about proverbs. Gaius's heart stumbles. The boy's words a mirror to his fears. He forces a grin. Nobody cares, Marcus, till you're signing contracts with your thumbprint. Write joke number 1, and it quiets them, but the truth gnaws. Gaius's work, hours of alphabet sums and Homer, will dissolve like dust in a storm. Rome's great men, Caesar, Cicero, leave statues and speeches. Teachers like him leave nothing but smudged wax and a cough that lingers. He thinks of that crocodile dung sunscreen vendor, whose name might outlast his in market gossip. The irony's bitter, like the sour wine he can't afford. The historical erasure of teachers like Gaius is a quiet tragedy. Elite tutors, serving senators' sons, might earn a footnote in a patron's memoir, but freedmen like Gaius, teaching shopkeepers' boys, vanish entirely. His students will carry his lessons, reading, counting, a scrap of Homer, but never his name. He corrects Quintus's tablet, his hand shaking, and wonders if Quintus will remember the man who taught him to write. Probably not. Gaius barely remembers his own teacher, a Greek who drilled him in a master's storeroom. The quirky wall-scratching tidbit tempts him. Carve Gaius was here into the insula's plaster, but it feels futile, like shouting into the Tiber. The street noise swells. A cart's wheel snaps, a vendor curses, and Gaius feels his legacy slipping away, as intangible as the dust in his room. Mid-morning the heat creeps in, and Gaius shifts to arithmetic. If you sell 10 loaves for 2 sesterces each, he starts, but Titus interrupts. Who cares about loaves? I'm going to be a gladiator. The boys laugh, and Gaius's cough cuts through his retort. Gladiators die, Titus. Numbers live forever. Joke number 2, and it lands softly, but the boy's indifference stings. Gaius's lessons are seeds scattered on rocky soil. Some might sprout, but none will bear his mark. He corrects Lucius's sums, squinting in the dim light, the shutters rattling with a gust. The drip plinks, and he thinks of elite tutors, whose students might name them in a Senate speech. Gaius's students will name him in jest, if at all. The scholarly debate about teachers' legacy feels personal. Did their obscurity lessen their impact? Gaius knows his work matters. Marcus might run a shop, Quintus might clerk, yet Rome buries him under its marble monuments. He tries a story from Homer, his voice cracking, hoping to leave a spark. The boys listen, briefly, until Marcus flicks a pebble, hitting Lucius's ear. Gaius snatches it, his cough worsening. Next one, and you're copying lines till sunset. It's a bluff. He's too weak to stay late, but the boys quiet. Gaius feels his efforts fading, each lesson a drop in the Tiber carried away by time. By noon the room's a furnace, the boys squirming, their tablets a mess of smudged wax. Gaius assigns a sentence. Pater meos laborat. My father works. Quintus mangles it, and Gaius corrects him, his hand trembling. The street noise peaks, a poet's bad verse echoes, and Gaius envies the poet's chance at fame, however fleeting. His own name will die with him, his classroom a forgotten nook. The scholarly debate stings. His impact is real but invisible, like the air he struggles to breathe. He leans against the wall, dizzy, and wonders if his sister far away might remember him. Unlikely, she can't even read his letters. The afternoon drags, and Gaius tries a proverb, festina lente. Make haste slowly. The boys copy it, half-hearted, and Gaius feels the weight of his unrecorded life. Parents' coins keep him alive, but nothing keeps his name. The drip plinks, the shutters creak, and he thinks of carving his initials, a small rebellion against oblivion. He won't. It's too much effort, and Rome would mock it anyway. The street vendor shouts about miracle tonics, and Gaius mutters, sell me a legacy instead. Joke number 3, and it's more plea than jest. As dusk settles, parents gather outside, their voices sharp. Gaius dismisses the boys, their tablets a chaotic pile and braces for complaints. Marcus's father grumbles about slow progress, oblivious to Gaius's sacrifice. Gaius nods, his cough muffled, promising better. The man leaves, and Gaius slumps against the wall. The drips plink a final taunt. His work shapes Rome's future, but Rome won't remember him. Tomorrow he'll teach again, a ghost in his own story, because in this city, teaching is a labour of love with no echo. The room grows still, the drip's rhythm slowing as if time itself pauses to cradle Gaius's weary heart. The air softens, the street's clamour fading to a gentle hum, like a lullaby whispered by the Tiber's flow. His cough eases, his trembling hands rest, and the weight of forgotten years lifts if only for this moment. You, nestled under your blankets, can feel the quiet now, the world's edges blurring into a warm haze. Gaius's story, like a candle's flicker, glows softly. It's light enough to carry you toward dreams. Let the day's worries drift. Let Rome's dust settle. You're safe here, wrapped in the slow cadence of history's whispers. Close your eyes, breathe deep, and let sleep find you, as gentle as a breeze over the 7 hills. Good night, dear listener, and may your dreams be kind.